A Quiet Place Day One, a prequel to the original films, takes the quiet action out of the small town of the first two films and into one of the noisiest cities in the country. While Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn have been universally praised for their takes on their characters, audiences' responses to the film as a whole have been quite a bit more split. So what works and what doesn't? And what is this film actually trying to say? Let's analyze all of that and more. The first two entries into the A Quiet Place series follow the Abbott family as they struggle to survive in small-town upstate New York in the aftermath of an alien invasion. We watch them deal with loss and grief and work to gain a deeper understanding of these invaders from outer space so that they might have a chance of fighting back. The central premise is, of course, the need to be quiet. The aliens are blind but have incredibly good hearing, and so hunt by sound. This was difficult enough to deal with in the rural farmland, but now the franchise has moved into the very decidedly not quiet New York City to give us new insight into how this invasion began. We did get to see a glimpse of how the initial impact affected the Abbott's small town at the beginning of the second film, but Day One brings us into the crowded heart of Manhattan for a very different experience.
Day one of the invasion in New York City comes with chaos and pandemonium. Nobody knows the new rules of the world.
Manhattan is a notoriously loud place. The opening of the film lets us know that it's usually hovering around 90 decibels, on par with a constant scream. And as anyone who lives here knows, anytime it's very quiet, it feels very unsettling.
It feels kind of surreal because New York is so noisy. So if it's ever not noisy, if it's ever quiet, it feels very odd and kind of ominous.
We follow Samira, a poet with terminal cancer living in hospice, who's become jaded to the world because of this way her full life is being cut so short. She already feels like she's living on borrowed time, kept alive by copious amounts of medication and sheer will. Her closest companion is her service cat Frodo. Funnily, Lupita was apparently actually afraid of cats prior to filming this movie, and coming to love the two cats that play Frodo.
Now, somehow, I love them.
She also has a friend in her nurse Ruben, who pushes her to hold on to the brighter side of living while she still can. In this effort, Ruben convinces Sam to join a group outing to a puppet show downtown, and it's during this trip that the invasion begins. Aliens rain down from the sky, destroying buildings and creating billows of smoke in every direction. To save us from having to re-watch a new group learn the aliens' mechanics, Sam is knocked out pretty early on in a blast and wakes up back in the theater with a group of survivors who were able to quickly figure out the aliens' audio perceptiveness. It's there that she meets a familiar face from a previous film, and soon comes to meet someone new who will help totally change her journey. But first, even when you're not dealing with an alien invasion, keeping your life together can feel like a major struggle. That's why we love how much Opera helps us keep our entire online life organized and secure. We love the Tab Island feature. Whether we're researching a topic for a video, or just trying to figure out what we want to watch in the evening, we often end up with so many open tabs. The Tab Islands feature makes it so simple to organize all of them into groups so that we can still find everything we're looking for without feeling like we're getting lost in an avalanche of tabs. And the built-in ad blocker makes it so that we can actually see the content we're looking for without having it get drowned out by pop-up ads, and generally just makes surfing the web so much smoother. The battery saver has also been a lifesaver in those instances where we just need our laptop battery to make it a little while longer. And bonus, it's already built into the Opera browser, and you can activate it in just one click. Opera has been a huge browser upgrade for us, so if you want to check it out too, click the link in the description. It's in the theater that she meets Henry, who we first encountered back in A Quiet Place Part 2, and where we see him go through the traumatic event he detailed in that film. After leaving the theater, Samira doesn't follow the hordes of survivors attempting to very quietly make it to South Ferry to catch boats off the island, as everyone at this point has also figured out that these aliens are part of the canon of invaders from outer space who do not like water and yet decide to land on a planet that is mostly water anyways, and so the bridges were destroyed in an effort to keep them from leaving. Though, given how wide their range was when they were raining down out of the sky, they clearly would have already been in Brooklyn and New Jersey to start with, but whatever. The movie needs a reason to create a closed room situation within Manhattan, and this is it. Instead, she heads uptown towards Harlem, where she grew up. As to why, we'll unpack that in just a moment. It's on her journey that she runs into Eric, a scared out of his mind English guy who was studying law in New York City and was just almost stuck in a flooded subway. They pair up as he decides to join her on her journey. Before we dig into analyzing what the film did well, let's first take a look at the things that don't actually work so well, as they do interfere with the larger effectiveness of the story as a whole. One smaller issue is that, because the vast majority of the film was shot on sets instead of on location, there's a slight, hollow, fake feeling to many of the places the characters inhabit. Because so many little things don't match up with real life, the connections between locations not mapping to real life, the subway signs not being in the right font, etc., everything starts to feel off in a way that's not deliberate. But those are minor squabbles, and pretty easy to overlook as you get drawn further into the story. The real problem is much larger. The film's director, Michael Sarnowski, who was introduced to audiences through his first feature film, Pig, the Nicolas Cage film that everyone went into expecting kooky Cage weirdness, only to find a touching, deep story about loss and holding on to connection.
You live your life for them, and they don't even see you. You don't even see yourself. We don't get a lot of things to really care about. Who has my pig?
Is very clearly both better at and more interested in the quieter, more human moments of this story. This on its own isn't at all a problem. Watching Sam grapple with her inner struggle and the budding connection between her and Eric is what gives the film its emotional core and keeps us hooked. But because this film is a major studio franchise release, that means that it also needs lots of big blockbuster moments. And those are where the film often falters. The pattern of hiding and running from the monsters does start to feel a little rote, and the jump scares lose their luster after the first few. As A.A. Dowd wrote in his review for Vulture, the location swap and shift to a new character doesn't materially transform what you could now call the formula of the franchise. A mix of silent brooding and special effects heavy chase sequences, like a Jurassic Park movie populated by sad mimes. We also just see the aliens too much. They've lost their mysterious, threatening quality and become less scary because of the fact that they're so visible. A long-held tenet of thriller films is to hold back on showing off the big baddie, because it's the audience's imagination that makes them that much scarier.
I'm scared to close my eyes. I'm scared to open them.
But while the film does falter in places, especially in its function as a big-budget action thriller, there are some important things it does well. Because Sarnowski is more interested in that deep human element, that is the part of the film that really shines. Samira had already been confronted by her mortality well before we meet her. And so, when the world around her begins to crumble, her interest isn't in self-preservation, but in holding on to hope in order to get one last moment of connection with her happier past before it's all wiped away forever. She sets out on her journey to Harlem ostensibly to get a slice of pizza from Patsy's, but of course it's not really about the pizza, though Patsy's is very good. She wants to relive her memories of her years growing up and visiting this place with her father, to relive the times before everything began to crumble and the darkness of the world began enveloping her. It's a metaphor for the larger way that the worlds of our pasts are constantly changing and slipping away from us, no matter how tightly we try to hold on to them, but also how the desire to not let go of those memories and of that part of ourselves can be the spark that drives us forward. And it's in her drive to get that one last piece of pizza that we can see that while she might have given up on her life, she hasn't given up on her humanity. She's accepted that an end is coming no matter how much she might try to fight it. But she has found an inner fire in making sure that she gets a say in how she goes out. While the grief at the center of the first A Quiet Place film was centered around the loss of a child, here the grief is more about the loss of your potential life that you'll never get to live. Something that Sam has had to come to terms with twice, first due to her cancer, and then again as she realizes any hope of treatment saving her is clearly out the window now that the world has been turned on its head. Frodo brings Sam and Eric together, and they exist in a bit of a gender swap from what we often see in thriller films. Here, Sam is the tough, focused on the goal one, and Eric is the emotional, in distress one. But as Black women have long been expected to exist as nearly unbreakable pillars of strength on screen, a trope we've done a whole video on, Sam's characterization here isn't really new in that particular respect. It is interesting that many reviewers have chosen to hit Eric with the, "Ugh, why is this damsel so distressed by this clearly wild life upending thing?" treatment. People freak out if a city rat runs over their shoe or someone tries to aggressively sell them a CD on the sidewalk, but losing it a bit because aliens have invaded the Earth and you're watching them destroy the city and rip people asunder is too over the top. Self-sacrifice for the survival of others has been a theme throughout every A Quiet Place film, and it continues here in the prequel. In the end, Samira sacrifices herself to save others, namely Eric and Frodo, giving them a chance to escape while she stays behind. But this is also part of her choice to go out in the way she decides. The world has taken away so many decisions from her, making her possible futures more and more narrow until there are essentially no options left. And so, in her final choice, she takes back some last semblance of control. Helping others or sacrificing yourself won't fix everything. As we've already seen in the other films, the aliens clearly continue their path of destruction unabated. But in this small group, her sacrifice gave others the opportunity to fight another day. It may have at first seemed odd to take a story that was originally about a tight-knit family and shift it to two total strangers, but it actually makes a lot of sense. New York City is a place where so many people find new connections, new families that shape them and help them grow. Building community where you can find it is at the heart of what makes the city great. And so it's fitting that in all of this chaos and danger, these two strangers found each other, formed an unlikely bond, and worked to help each other survive. Even if it didn't end in a happily ever after, even if they weren't able to change the entire trajectory of the world and save the day, they helped to save each other on a deeper level, and sometimes that's enough. A Quiet Place Day 1 certainly isn't perfect, but the powerful performances and deep heart at the core of the film allow it to shine.
Yes, there are creatures and yes, there are scares, but the investment is really in the characters.
It does a good job of feeling like it's trying to say something new for a third movie in a thriller franchise. And its interest in unpacking what keeps us going when everything seems lost, when giving up would be so much easier, provides interesting insight into the integral heart of humanity that keeps us together and keeps us going despite the odds.
That's The Take. Click here to watch the video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.
And make sure to subscribe to our Patreon for exclusive new videos.